Good evening, guys. I believe I have some people with me here already. We thank God that the timetable is in our favor because we have a lot of space between your last course, your last exam, and this particular course. So I believe the space will be enough to cover the whole material. Though it's a very bulky one, about 200 and something pages, 230. Notwithstanding, with the time we have, we'll be able to cover it. So I would like let's quickly uh, scan through the book or probably skim through it. The material is all about science. It's divided into four different modules, and each module with an average of 5 units. That is total of 20 units in everything. And in module one, we'll be talking about the nature of science. Module two, the scientific method. Yes, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Fatima Husseini. Good evening, Angela. Good evening, Haruna. And good evening, Esther Chidi. You're all welcome. Don't forget, as soon as you join, it's very good you give the video a thumbs up before you join the chat. Thank you. So, in Unit 3, we'll talk about basic scientific theories. Excuse me. Unit 4, laws of nature. Unit 5, history of Western science. And that is part one. And then under that, we'll talk about the origin of Western science in ancient times. That will lead us to module two, where we'll continue on history of science, part two. And there we'll talk about science in the Middle Ages of Europe, and then after the history of science, part three, rise of modern science, history of science, part four, the 20th century scientific revolution, and then unit 4 of module 2, the lost sciences of Africa, and overview 1 and 2. Now we'll move to module 3. Nsikak, you're welcome. Victor, you're welcome. We'll move to module 3, where we will talk about science, technology, and inventions. Unit 2, social implications of technological advancement, the nature and scope of philosophy of science, man and his origin, the nature of man. And then the last module in the material is man and his cosmic environment, man and his natural resources, great scientists of Nigeria origin. Revision, revision, revision. So I think under that great scientists of Nigeria origin, that is what we'll be talking about the likes of Philip Emeagwali, the father of internet. We'll be talking about Bartholomew Inaji, Henrietta and Njoku Obi and the rest of them. They are all scientists of Nigeria origin. Uh, uh, Sincerely, over the semesters or past semesters, the focus has always been more on module 3 and 4 than in module 1 and 2. So as a result of that, instead of starting the reading from module 1, I would have suggest we we start from module 3, then read module 4, and go back to module 1, and then module 2, since we actually have time. We have time. Good evening, everyone. Big Eva, you're welcome. I've not seen Dora. I've not seen Grace. I think they're still busy. Uh, okay, we have Rita. Rita is here. You're welcome. Okay, so let's start. But the best way would have been to start from the beginning to talk about the nature of science, the scientific method. But before we go into the nature of science course that are online already, when you hear the word science, what comes to your mind? Let's start from there. It's a very short question. This one is not something you need to crack your brain. Just tell us what comes to your mind when you hear the word science or the word science. What's the first thing that registers in your mind what will your mind go to straight the moment you hear somebody mention science? What comes to mind when you hear the word science? What's the first thing your mind registers when you hear the word science? Yes, somebody said physics. Angela Chidera, you're actually correct. When we hear science, Insikak, we think of nature when she hears science. Well, you all, we have a point. I sincerely want us to start from module 3, but I am seeing the need to start from module 1 because they've arranged the knowledge sequentially. So if we start from module 3, you might not understand it much. Okay, we have people saying that their own thought will be nature and somebody saying physics. Well, you are all correct. So let's look at this thing we call science. What is the nature of science? What is the nature of science? In this module, we will talk about the definitions of science, which means science does not have one single definition. It has definitions. We'll check the different definitions we are likely going to come up with and even devise our own definition of science. Then branches of science, aims of science, differences between science and non-science disciplines. The way we have science disciplines, we also have the ones that don't deal with science. So this unit will make you aware of the various definitions of science, their branches and aims of science, and the differences between science and non-science disciplines. It is also important to you because it will help you understand the subsequent units. You see the reason why I said I will not jump. Okay, thank you, Esther Chidi, for noticing that. Not really so. I've been sleeping and sleeping and sleeping since morning. I think it's the sleep that is showing in my. Don't worry, by the time we'll enter the class for like 30 minutes, I think my energy will be resuscitated. All right, so the objectives below specify what you are expected to learn after going through this unit. What am I supposed to know? What will they test me on from this unit? One, outline the three ways of defining science, which means this unit will tell us three different ways you can define science. So when you want to define science, you need to put into consideration those three things in order to have a perfect or closely perfect definition for science. Now, identify carefully the areas of knowledge which qualify to be science, which means there are some field, especially that's why you see even in your institution like this, we have arts department, we have social science, we have science, we have law, we have and so on and so forth. So which ones qualifies to be science? Why can we say this course is qualified to be called a science course? Then state briefly the purpose of science. State briefly the purpose of science. All right, let's go to definition, guys. It's very important. The reason why we can't jump module 1 and go and start from module 3 is because they've arranged the topics sequentially in a sequential order, so that if you understand module 1, it will lead to your proper understanding of module 2. So if you just jump one module and go to another, we will miss important blocks we should have laid before getting to those places. So definitions of science. What comes to your mind when you hear the word science? Well, something like chemistry, physics, biology, or mathematics. The word science is derived from the Latin word scientia. Let's start from there. Science is a word that came from Latin. That's the first thing. And the Latin word that was translated to be science is the word we call scientia. Is the word we call scientia. Is the word we call scientia. So scientia means science in English, but in Latin it is scientia. What's the meaning of scientia in Latin? In English now we say science. In Latin, scientia. But what's the meaning of scientia in Latin? I think you go to a Latin speaking nation now and you mentioned the word scientia, what will register in their own mind that you are talking about? Scientia means knowledge. Three important things already mentioned here that are useful for examination. One is that science was a derived word, and it was derived from Latin. And the Latin word that gave birth to science is scientia. But in Latin, the meaning of the word scientia is knowledge, which means we can basically say that science is knowledge based on the etymological meaning from Latin. So, mm, so we can nail that now, that the word science was a derived word from Latin. Don't say German, don't say French. It's from Latin, scientia. So it's from Latin scientia, which means knowledge. All right, let's move on. Now, which means knowledge. On the simplest level, science has been defined as the knowledge of the world of nature. On the simplest level, science has been defined as the knowledge of the world of nature, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica. There is this sorry, there was, sorry, let's try to be speaking well. There was this semester they asked this definition, but in the OBJ, but they asked that the definition was given by who. So it's also important to know that it is the new Encyclopedia Britannica in 1995 that gave the definition of science to be defined as knowledge of the world around us, or the world of nature. So Encyclopedia Britannica defined science as the knowledge of the world around us. So we have one definition now. Science is the knowledge of the world around us. Were they able to use the word knowledge? Because science came from a Latin word, scientia, which means knowledge. So the above definition, this is so funny. This course that you people need so much is the course we do not see enough of people now. But don't worry, I believe most today is Sunday, so most people may be busy. Probably they will watch the recording. The above definition, however, does not exhaust the full meaning of science, so it is difficult to define it. However, science generally is regarded in three main ways. So, if we should go by the definition of the Encyclopedia Britannica, which was given in 1995, we will be defining science in a narrow way. Science is far more than that. So we cannot just say science is the knowledge of the world around us. It's much more than that. So if you are to define science in a general term, we can define science in three forms. What are the three forms we can define science? Science can be defined as a body of knowledge. One. Secondly, it can be defined as a method of acquiring knowledge or studying and understanding the world, which is closely related to what Britannica, the Encyclopedia Britannica gave us as a definition. So, method of acquiring knowledge or studying and understanding the world. And the last definition we can give to science is that science may be seen as an institution. So we can define science in three forms. Kindly list the three forms in the chat box. Try to be following. Let me see you guys typing the three forms of defining science. You can define it as a body of knowledge, a method of acquiring knowledge, and then an institution. So in OBJ, when they say which of the following is not one of the three main ways to define science, or we can define science, or we may define science, and they list a body of knowledge, a method of acquiring knowledge, an institution, and one other thing. You should know that science can be defined as a body of knowledge, a method of acquiring knowledge, or an institution. So we will now look at each of them one by one. When we say science is a body of knowledge, what are we talking about? What field of science, what part of science falls under a body of knowledge? That is the next thing we'll be talking about now. So let's start with science as a body of knowledge. What does the word body tell you? The word body, what does it tell you? Now, the bodies of knowledge generally regarded as science include chemistry, biology, physics, mathematics, microbiology, pharmacy, and medicine. Well, you know, those ones that usually come to your mind when you hear science, those are the ones we can refer to as science as a body of knowledge. Those ones that when you hear the word science, chemistry just come to your mind. Those that are doing chemistry, physics, biology, and the rest of the science students. Now, that is science as a body of knowledge, which means is a system of knowledge, a body of knowledge, but a knowledge that you gather together to make that a body can stand alone. Chemistry can stand on its own now as a body, studying everything that relates to probably chemicals or anything. So the bodies, okay, so we've listed them. So there is a funny way they ask question here that science regards to whatever or something like science in chemistry, sorry, as defined as, I'm trying to get that exact question, but there is a question they use there to include chemistry, biology, physics, mathematics, and so on. What kind of sciences are those? Those are science as bodies of knowledge. Science as bodies of knowledge. So these bodies differ from other forms of knowledge, such as religion and art, in both content and form. You will study about these differences in subsequent section. So that is all we need to know now as science as a body of knowledge. So when I'm asked that, when we view science in terms of or in forms of chemistry, physics, biology, what are we saying? What kind of definition of science are we giving? We're actually giving science as a body of knowledge, a body, a complete body. Chemistry is a complete body. Physics is a complete body. Mathematics is a complete body. You should know that mathematics is science. Please note that. Now, what of science as a method of acquiring knowledge? Let me quickly remind us that we mentioned earlier that there are three ways we can define science if you want to define it generally, if you don't want to give it a narrow definition. The first one is science as a body of knowledge. We have science as a method of acquiring knowledge or studying and understanding the world around us. And then science as an institution. We've talked about science as a body of knowledge, which is the one that is common, where I will hear science and chemistry, physics, biology, and the rest of them will come to my mind. What of science as a method of acquiring knowledge? This is science as well-known procedures for obtaining knowledge. The two branches of science, which are empirical and formal science. Now, this place is giving us another important or vital information that we should register in our long-term memory, that we have two branches of science. We have two branches of science, and they are empirical science and formal science. So we have the empirical sciences, or science rather, and the formal science. So those are the two branches of science we have. They are under method of acquiring knowledge, which means if we say that the step one was defining science as a body of knowledge in terms of chemistry, physics, and biology, how do we study those knowledge? How do we get to chemistry? How do we get to physics? The method of acquiring the knowledge of chemistry, the method of physics, is what we are now dealing with as the second way we can define science. So how do we study to acquire the knowledge of physics? That is why we have two ways you can study science. We have the empirical. Don't forget that what we are saying is definition, three ways, but in study it two ways. There are two things now. Ways of defining science, giving definition to science. We have science as a body of knowledge, science as a method of acquiring that knowledge that is a body, and then science as an institution. But under the method in which we can study science, we have science on you can study empirically, that is empirical science, or formal science. So we will now say that use, okay, which are empirical and formal sciences, use what is called the scientific method. So whether you are using empirical method of studying science or formal method of studying science, All you are doing is called scientific method. Scientific method. So under scientific methods, we have empirical and formal sciences. These are things you'll be registering one after the other. We'll be going slowly. We are studying for exam. That is why I'm not rushing. Under science, in form of methods in which we can study science, we have empirical and formal method of studying science. However, those two methods can be called the scientific method. So the two steps of that method include, well, I'm not sure it's two steps. We have there is an error here, but the steps of studying or using the scientific method, the steps involved in using the scientific method include: one, observation. Science basically begins from you observing something in nature, observing something, some occurrences in nature. When you observe, then we have problem hypothesis. From your observation, some it will lead you to detecting a problem from that thing you are observing. That there is a problem here. There is a problem in this thing I'm looking at. Okay, okay, we have, actually this thing is scattered. It should be problem identification or whatever. Then hypothesis formulation. You now start thinking of different ways in which this problem can be solved, different ways in which you can come up with solution. You are not certain of which one of them will work here, but you are just looking. Okay, you've observed, you've identified a problem. You are now looking at, okay, if I should approach this problem like this, will it work? Will it solve? Okay, what if I approach it? What if it work for 2 days? In the next 3 days, so in the next day, which is the third day, what will happen? How can okay, this method will not work. Okay, what if I use this method? Will this method last forever? Is it going to be a long time solution or a short time solution? All you are doing then is your hypothesis formulation. And after then, you move to experimentation. So the bit after you come up with hypothesis, you will test them. Each hypothesis is just like a guess that, okay, this solution may work, this solution may work. I don't know if it will work yet. How do I know if it will work? I will experiment. I will subject them under rigor experiment. I will experiment one by one each hypothesis I have formed on that problem. So when I do experimentation, I may come up with a conclusion which will eventually become a theory. I will form a theory, and sometimes when the theory has been subjected to so many testing and found to be true, if they've used it several times over and over again and they got the same result, it will become a law. That is where you hear the law of inertia, the law of this, the law of that in physics, the law of this in the law of gravity. It's because they've tested those things over and over again and they found them to be true. So when you test a law in America and you test it in Nigeria, you still get the same result. That is meaning of a law. It's been tested. I know this class may be very boring, especially to those that are not in science class. Yes, it's very boring, but just try your best. It's one of the course you guys find uninteresting, but God will help us. So that is the steps included in the scientific method. Can we list them? Let's try to list them in the chat box. The steps involved in the scientific method. We have observation, problem identification, hypothesis, experimentation, conclusion and theory formulation. Now for formal science utilizes concepts, rules, and theories, and expresses them in quantitative and statistical manner. So it is formal science that uses concept. I think under this one, you may be having something like mathematics, statistics, and the rest of them, because in mathematics, if the rules are not obeyed, you will get the wrong answer. So formal science uses rules. So in exam, when you are given a definition and probably asked to whether it is formal or empirical, you should know that for formal science, the formal science, they work based on uh, I think predetermined or prescribed rules. Rules, you must follow rules to get result. There are rules that have been, stated There are rules and theories that have been put in place in formal sciences for results to be meaningful or possible. So those rules, concepts, and blah blah blah. You understand the meanings of empirical concepts, rules, and theories in subsequent section. So anybody that uses the scientific method or the method of formal sciences to obtain knowledge is said to be involved in science. So when you are using all these methods, whether empirical or formal, to gain knowledge, you are engaging in science. So we have many things we've talked about so far. We've started from the definitions of science. There was a definition given by the new Encyclopedia Britannica in 1995 that states that science is the study of the world of nature, the study of the world of nature. That was the definition, but that was a very narrow definition. So we say generally there are three ways. I'm just recapping now for those that are just joining or to refresh our brain. So in three ways we can define science: science as a body of knowledge, science as a method of acquiring knowledge, and then science as an institution. Then under science as a method of acquiring knowledge, we said science can be studied uh, in using two methods: the empirical method and the formal method. For the empirical method, we have several steps involved, like the observation to problem identification, forming the hypothesis, experimenting, concluding, and forming the theories. Then we move to formal sciences, and we define formal sciences as science that deals with rules and theories. For results to be attained in formal sciences, you must obey, you must follow the rules and theories that have been laid down for you to arrive at the result. So the last one under that part is science as an institution. What comes to mind when we hear science as an institution? Originally, we might have known what institution means, but what is science as an institution? Science can be viewed as an institution which comprises millions of experts. These experts engage in the study and development of human knowledge. The expert of or scientists, as we call them. So in exam, if they say the expert or dash, can be found in various research and educational institutions or industries, hospitals, companies, etc. Okay, I have a very short test to give us now. So I want you guys to test yourself and see if you are following. So let's answer the question there. So the cooperation and interaction among them make the development of science possible and reliable. Of course, when you hear institution, they're actually talking about all the institutions that work together to come up with rules, legacies, how science operates in terms of industries, hospitals, and the rest of them. So when they say institution, they're talking of now a kind of legalized body that deals with or in science. So science as an institution, when you start hearing industries, hospitals, companies, they are talking of science as an institution. When you start hearing mathematics, physics, biology, chemistry, they are talking about science as a body of knowledge. And when you start hearing about formal and empirical sciences or observation, uh, problem identification, hypothesis, experimentation, and so on and so forth, until you get to theory. They're talking about science as a method of acquiring knowledge. So let's take the exercise. Fill in the blanks by choosing the correct word or phrase. Fill in the blanks by choosing the correct word or phrase. So what will you use to fill in the blank? Let's look at that. List the three main ways in which science is viewed. I want you guys to answer that. If you answer that, then we'll move to the next thing. List the three ways in which science is viewed. Three ways in which science is viewed. Three ways in which science is viewed. Body of knowledge, thank you. I'm still waiting for you. Body of knowledge, yes. What of the second one? Science can be viewed as a body of knowledge. What of the second one? As a method of acquiring knowledge as then as an institution. Okay. Number two, formal science utilizes dash and dash to gain knowledge of nature. Formal science utilizes A, B, C. So A, B, and C, about three things. What are the three things that formal science utilizes to gain the knowledge of nature? What are the three things formal sciences, or sorry, formal science utilize? Don't worry, don't forget I will mention empirical science and formal science. So what are the three things mentioned under formal science that formal science uses to gain the knowledge of nature? Yes, I'm waiting for you guys. Okay, Dora says body of knowledge, a method of acquiring knowledge or studying and understanding the world, and then an institution. That is correct. Okay, so the second question is before us. Formal science utilizes A, B, C. Three things. What are the three things? Concept, rules, and theories. Thank you, Dora. You are a darling. They use rules, theories, and concepts. Thank you, to gain the knowledge of nature. All right, so branches of science. We are moving to another thing entirely. Branches of science. In the last section, you learned the various meanings of the word science. In this section, you will be exposed to the two ways of grouping scientific disciplines or bodies of knowledge. This will enable you to identify anytime the areas knowledge which qualify to be called science. The first way is to group the scientific disciplines into one, formal sciences and empirical sciences. Don't forget that when we talk about the scientific disciplines we're talking about the chemistry, physics, biology, whatever, medicine, and the rest of them. So we can group them into two forms: the formal sciences and the empirical sciences. Now, what is formal sciences? In the more deeper way, we touched it a bit in the previous section. We will not do it better now. Now, formal sciences include mathematics. Don't forget that we said formal sciences are the ones that deals with rules, concepts, and theories. They must follow a rule. There must be a rule that you must obey before you arrive at a result under formal sciences. So, what type of institution or body of knowledge can qualify to be called formal sciences? Which among all the sciences we have, which one of them must you follow some set of rules for you to arrive at a solution? So we have mathematics as the first example of formal science. So which comprises of geometry, algebra, trigonometry, and arithmetic. If you sometimes when you hear the word mathematics, is a very ambiguous. It contains several branches. You cannot just say you know mathematics. What part of math do you know? If you say you know geometry, what part of geometry do you know? So science, mathematics is very wide. So formal sciences, the first one is mathematics. And under mathematics, we have geometry, algebra, trigonometry, and arithmetic. The one most of you know is arithmetic. The one most of us here that we are here, the one we know is arithmetic. Well, you can see now that mathematics is far more than that, and mathematics is a formal science. Now, formal sciences have a formal and deductive character. Formal sciences have a formal and deductive character. It is formal science that has a formal and deductive, not inductive, deductive character. They have deductive character. Please make sure you are contributing to the chart. I'm dropping those charts for you to be following. Formal sciences have a formal and deductive character. Science is formal if its content, argument, and procedures obey certain rules. Is very simple. Science is set. Don't forget, in fact, anything formal in this course, when you start dealing with formal, question on formal, just look out for rules, concepts, or theories. If they will use one of them, that is what will show that this thing is formal science, not empirical science. Don't forget that we have two ways of grouping science. We can group science empirically or formal, or as a formal science. So we are dealing with the first group now, formal science, which a very good example of formal science is mathematics. Under mathematics, we have geometry, algebra, trigonometry, and arithmetic. But we now want to talk about the word formal science on its own, and we say it's a kind of science that the content, what it contains, or the argument it argues, or procedures it uses, they follow certain rules. So certain rules must be followed for you to arrive at formal science. Now, the result and conclusion of such sciences are valid and authentic only if they conform to those rules. So if you are given a simultaneous equation to solve now, and you use your own head, you do not follow the rules of simultaneous equation, the method, the steps of solving simultaneous equation. Yes, you may use your own lie way of solving it and get a very wrong answer. You will still get answer, but your answer will be wrong because you did not follow the rules. Science and mathematics is a formal science. For you to, you must follow the step. So if you are doing maybe uh, set now, maybe you are dealing with set on language equation, and you are solving something using language, and you do not follow you do not use his formula, how will you get the answer? The rules will obey for you to get the result in formal sciences. For example, in mathematics, there are rules of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So there are also rules for solving certain equations and problems or theories, etc. So in math, we know that one, that is not something we are not used to. It's not something we are not used to. I've dropped another question there. So it's not something we are not used to. So let's take, for instance, that you are given the following problems to solve. Let's take, for instance, so you see, you are likely going to see mathematics in this course too, if they decide to ask you 3 all over 4 of open bracket 5 all over 6 plus 1 all over 4 close bracket, and 7 all over 3 times 4 plus 1 all over 2 minus 3. One was separated, or yes, one was written with bracket, the other one no bracket. How will you go about it? If you just see this question, where will you start? Will you do the addition first or the division first? How will you get the correct answer? There is a rule in mathematics called BODMAS. That takes us to BODMAS. What is the full meaning of BODMAS? I believe that from primary school, most of us, we already know it because our teachers gave us a very simple way of grabbing it. So help me to type the full meaning of BODMAS. Grace, you are welcome. You came late, but you referred to the recording afterwards. So let's take the meaning of BODMAS because they ask this question a lot. I only don't know if it will come out this semester. I don't want to be telling you guys that one thing will come out or not, but this is a question in the question bank, the full meaning of BODMAS. So if we don't have a rule called BODMAS, I will be confused on how to solve this question when I see it. Well, this one is even a bit neat. This second one is going to look rough. I won't even know what to do. Where will I start from? Will I first do the minus or the division or the multiplication? So because math is a formal science, there is a rule already given which you must follow to solve this kind of equation. So the rule says that bracket is solved first, followed by off. You understand? Then division, multiplication, addition, and subtraction in that order. The mnemonic or device for remembering this rule is called BODMAS. And BODMAS means B stands for bracket, that's bracket, O off, Well, in a serious mathematics, we use O as order, but here is off. D, division. M, multiplication. A, addition. S, subtraction. Please know the meaning of BODMAS. Yes, it's only one person that is dropping the meaning. The rest of you, drop your own. Don't say somebody have dropped what you want to drop. Write your own. I want to be seeing you guys contributing. So, because of a rule that is already given called BODMAS, I will be able to solve that mathematics equation given above. Now, the result and conclusion of the problem above will be valid and authentic only if the rule of BODMAS is followed, which means without following the rule of BODMAS, I can decide to solve it anyhow. I can decide to start with minus on my own, in my own intuition. But my intuition will not be valid because if it does not follow the rule of BODMAS, whatsoever I get as my answer will remain invalid if I did not use the rule of BODMAS. That is why they say formal sciences follow rules, theories, and concepts that have been laid down under that science for you to follow in order to arrive at a reasonable solution, a standard or acceptable solution. Thus, a body of formal systematic and deductive character. Okay, that is of formal science. So, having done this, we have gotten to the a bit end of formal science. Most important thing to remember under formal science is that any argument, any proposition, any solution, anything that formal science will deal with must obey certain rules, theories, or concepts. So, what of empirical sciences? We are done with formal sciences now. So, let's go to empirical sciences. On the other hand, empirical science include physics, chemistry, biology, psychology, botany, zoology, biochemistry, microbiology, geology, medical sciences, etc. But quite a lot of every other form of science you can think of apart from mathematics and statistics, they are all under empirical sciences. Every other type of science as a body of knowledge that you can think of aside uh, what do we call it, mathematics, they are mostly under empirical. Now, what does it mean that they are empirical? You see, okay, let me ask us first so that you understand this concept of empirical very well. Kindly check your dictionary, your AI or whatever. What's the meaning of empirical? Leave science out of it. What's the meaning of the general meaning of empirical? Yes, I'll wait for you guys to give me the meaning before we dive in so that you understand why physics, chemistry, biology, psychology, botany, zoology, biochemistry, microbiology, geology, medical sciences, and the rest falls under empirical sciences. Let's check for the meaning of empirical. Please check it, and give me the meaning. So when you drop the meaning, I will proceed. Let me wait for you guys to drop the meaning. Yes, find out the meaning of empirical yourself. When you find it out, it helps you to remember in the exam whenever you see empirical. Or what does it mean that something is empirical in nature? What is the meaning of empirical? Yes, let's check for the meaning. Let's check for the meaning. The meaning of empirical. Based on observation. Based on observation. Thank you. There is one word I'm looking for. Let me see more answers to the meaning of empirical. I want to hear more. Let's see more. Let's see more. What's the meaning of empirical? I love that based on observation. That is correct too. But I kind of need more. I need more. There is a particular word I'm looking for. Yes, I'm waiting for you guys. Experience, experiment rather than theory or opinion. So the reason why I ask you guys to look for the meaning of empirical yourself is that I want you to know that we have a difference between empirical and formal. In fact, empirical is the opposite of formal. Just note it like that. Empirical is the opposite of formal. So when you say formal science is an opposite of empirical science, what you can see. Mathematics, you're only using your head, your brain. X is equals to, look for the root of x when kiniko is equals to, that one is just, you are just using some rules, just logic. It's not like you can go and hold x like this. There is nowhere to go and hold x minus y like this. But all other sciences we are mentioning here, all of that body of knowledge, like botany now, you go to farm, you see the trees, you see the seeds you want to plant, you can feed them, you understand. Like zoology, you see the animal face to face, they are physical, you can observe them, you can see them, you can touch them. That is the idea of empirical. So any science that deals with body of knowledge in things you can observe, you can see, you can touch, you can feel, you understand, you are talking of empirical science. Now that is what I want to do to help you understand empirical sciences. Now, this study objects and phenomena which can be observed through any of the senses and which can be tested with instruments such as telescope, microscope, ruler, tapes and scales. So tomorrow when you're asked that which type of which method of science can be studied using telescope, microscope, ruler, tapes and scales, they are talking of empirical science. Or which type of science deals with observing things through the senses, they are talking about empirical sciences. All you need to know, so that you will not be confused, is that formal science has to do with rules, following some rules, step one, step two, step three, before you get to the answer, the solution of something. That is formal science. But when it has to do with observation, experimentation, identifying a problem, forming a hypothesis and the rest of them, you are talking about empirical sciences. So in other words, anything that cannot be observed with the senses of sight, touch, hearing, taste and smell, or with instruments such as ruler, telescope, etc., is outside science. Based on empirical science, is outside science. Okay, so I have a question to ask us. Kindly list the five sense organs, or the five senses. Let me just use it like that. I want you guys to list the five senses we have. The chat is very poor. I don't know why. You guys are not. I by now the chat should be flooded. I have so many questions there already to be answered. That study object and phenomenon which can be observed through any of the senses. Yes, I know. I know it's Thursday, but you understand better why we decide to start studying the course very early like this. You understand better on Thursday. Don't worry, you may not understand now, but by that Thursday you understand. So the five senses we have, yes. Well, we will not take long. We are just going to be doing it short every day. You understand? Till that Thursday, we'll do it short, so that it will not disturb those of you that are having exams. You understand? They are having exams. Okay, I'm waiting for the five sense organs we have: sight, touch, hearing, taste, and smell. Okay. All right, thank you. So anything that is not observable is not science, based on empirical sciences. Anything that cannot be observed with the senses or using instruments like telescope, like microscopes, microscopic, whatever, like the ruler, the tapes, it is outside science. Can you think of examples of sense perception and non-sense perception objects? Sense perception objects, which are the subject of empirical sciences, the things that we can observe with the senses, the five senses we have, five sense organs we have. So those are empirical science. They include the human body, bodies of other animals such as goats, cows, and dogs, as well as natural objects such as the weather, disease, plant, and insect. This can be observed with the senses or measured with instruments because they are material things. For example, or for instance, we can see a cow walking on the road, perceive the odor of its droppings, touch its hairy body, or taste its flesh, according to Wabuisi. Nwabuisi, I think that is Igbo name. So just know that observable elements, they are all under empirical sciences. Observable elements, they are all under empirical sciences. So thus, empirical scientists observe and experiment in order to find out how things originate, grow or develop, function and relate to each other. So that is for the work of empirical scientists. All empirical scientists study in their life is the origin of things, the growth and development of things, the relationship between things. That is all empirical scientists study. They also try to find out the laws which govern their behavior. They are interested in regularities or laws which enable them to understand or explain the object or phenomena under study. The knowledge derived in empirical sciences includes inductive generalization. Formal sciences are deductive in nature. Empirical sciences are inductive in nature. Please note this, it's very important. These are things they ask in the exam. Formal sciences are deductive in nature because you are just using one rule or steps that has already been given, you understand, to get at something. So sorry, I'm trying to give you guys a short note to remember there. So that is it. Now we have you will study about this concept in unit 2 and 4. Okay, the concepts are formulated in clearly defined statements, propositions, or in statistical equations or formula. Objects which cannot be perceived by the senses include values such as the goodness or badness of a thing. Those ones are things we cannot touch, we cannot feel. Well, we can't say we can't feel it, but there are things we can't observe with our senses. You cannot use your eyes now to measure how good or how bad somebody is. We have righteousness or rightness, virtue, beauty. You can see that somebody is beautiful or not beautiful, but you can't measure it with any senses. So that is non-sense. I'm not saying nonsense, but non-sense. There is a gap between non-sense values. So, like beautiful and the rest of them. So, if we have the following statement that Ada is a good girl, do you think you can observe goodness with your senses or measure it with an instrument? No, it is not possible. And so, the study of goodness is outside empirical science. So somebody studying goodness now is not doing science. That is not empirical science. The second way of grouping scientific disciplines is according to the class of object or phenomenon they deal with. Don't forget that we said there are two ways in which we can group science. Science disciplines. Two ways in which we can group science or scientific disciplines. We can group them based on formal sciences and empirical sciences. Now, the second way we can group them is based on the object or class or phenomenon they deal with. That is where we now start talking about natural science and social science, like you are now having, where you now have you now say, my own, I'm in the faculty of science, I'm in the faculty of social science, is because of the second way of grouping excuse me, science that we have. Okay, I believe some of you have exams tomorrow. So I want to ask for your opinion when we should stop tonight's class. When should we end the class? Yes, I want to hear from you guys. When should we stop the class tonight? While you are thinking about that, let's because this is not a course you can actually rush. So the second way of grouping scientific disciplines according to the class of objects. Another that we have natural sciences, which deal with all natural objects. Under it, we have physical sciences, which include disciplines like physics, chemistry, geology, applied mathematics, astronomy. Those ones they study the physical nature of the world. These deal with the physical and inanimate objects such as rocks, rivers, and mountains. Physical sciences. So in exam, they used to say the branch of science that deals with inanimate objects such as rocks, rivers, and mountains is known as dash. Please, you should know what the answer is. Is physical science. Is physical science. Okay, excuse me, I'm trying to come up with a question. Just give me a few seconds to type it. So somebody is saying 9, 10. No, people have exams tomorrow. We have people having 2 papers tomorrow. Once we cross 1 hour, I will stop it. So tomorrow we'll continue. So uh those are physical sciences. Then we have biological sciences. Disciplines under this include biology, zoology, botany, microbiology. These deal with living bodies such as human beings, animals, insects, and plants. They are all biological sciences. Then we have medical sciences. They include general medicine, anatomy, surgery, physiology, and veterinary medicine. This discipline deals with objects and problems that affect human and animal health. They are all medical science. Then pharmaceutical sciences, which include pharmaceutics, pharmaceutical chemistry, pharmacognosy, and pharmacology. They are all under they are all under natural sciences. The second group or groupings of science we are dealing with as grouping them based on the class of object or phenomena they deal with. And the first one is natural sciences, where we have physics, under natural sciences, we have physical science, biological science, medical sciences, and pharmaceutical sciences, all under natural sciences. 4 of them: the physical, the biological, the medical, and the pharmaceutical. They are all under natural sciences. Now, these disciplines are concerned with drugs and drug content of plants and other objects. That is for pharmaceutical sciences. The second grouping under these uh, groups of sciences we are looking at is the social sciences. This is where you see those of you doing BSc economics, because you'll be wondering why is economics BSc? Why is business administration BSc? Why are they Bachelor of Science? Why are they not Bachelor of Art or Bachelor of any other thing? It's because they are all under sciences. You understand? So we have social sciences like economics, social psychology, geography, sociology, and anthropology, social philosophy, all under social sciences. So all they deal with the society and social institutions. Now, in spite of all this classification of science, there is a point that is worth noting. The difference between the disciplines are not absolute, which means they are interrelated. Okay, now when you are saying economics, social psychology, and we are talking about medical science and physical science, they are all inter. You will still meet physical science inside that economics. You will still meet economics a bit inside maybe pharmaceutical sciences. So we are going to bring out another point now. Don't forget what we have done so far under groupings of science. We have two ways we can group science. We can group it first as physical or as formal and empirical sciences. That is based on the method of studying them. We can group science in two forms. The first one is based on the method of studying them and based on the objects or phenomenon they study. So based on the method of studying them, we have formal and empirical sciences. We've talked about them. Then based on the object and phenomenon that they study, we have natural sciences and social sciences. But we now want to bring out something now, that the disciplines began to be systematically arranged in the late 19th century so as to avoid inconsistency and overlapping. So when did they start the arrangement of all these disciplines by saying this one is natural science, this one is this? I think before everything was just science. It started in which century? The 19th century. It was in the 19th century that they started systematical arrangement of the disciplines so that they don't overlap, so that we don't say we are doing pharmaceutical science and we'll be studying medicine. So you understand this point clearer as you study to unit 5 and 8. Now, differences between the disciplines arise as differences of viewpoint between the scientists. In other words, the significant thing is not that chemistry differs from physics, but that the chemist's view of the world differs from that of the physicist. It is good that you accept all disciplines as part of life and all living, life and of living and of our curiosity about the world around us. But to be realistic, most university departments or programs and professional bodies are based on well-defined and separated subjects. Presently, however, some integration of the sciences is making a comeback. For instance, we now have fields of study such as physical chemistry, biochemistry, and biophysics, which is a combination of biology and physics, combination of biology and chemistry, and natural science plus chemistry, which means they are now, like we can say, they are now marrying each other. They are now having conjunction. They join together to form a single body, which is now like an hybrid version. So the figure below illustrates a theme approach to integration of science and other subjects in the Israeli curriculum. Now, the theme or phenomenon under study is light and shadow. The figures show how the theme, light and shadow, is viewed or studied by disciplines such as art, physics, and botany. Okay, this is not something to dwell much on. So, we have an exercise with which we will end this section. If you write it 19th century in exam, that is fail. Well, is correct, but what is in the material is 19th in words. So writing it as 19 is fail. Now, a take home, or let's say in conclusion for tonight's class, this is a multiple choice question. Encircle the letter of the correct alternative. An example of a formal science is dash. An example of a formal science is dash. A, medicine. B, economics. C, biology. D, mathematics. What's the answer to question number 1? The reason why I want us to be taking each of the exercises under each unit is, number 1, to assess if you have truly gone to the unit, and then number 2, because they do use those questions exactly in GST105. So we will not jump any question. If you can't hear anything, it's probably from your side. Maybe you should leave the meeting and join back. All right. Big Eva is the first. Okay, he's not the first person. We have people saying mathematics already. Thank you. That is correct. Because it's one that follow rules, theories to arrive at a result. Number 2, objects which can be perceived by the senses include dash. Human body, goats, weather, D, all of the above. What's the answer to number two? What is the answer? Ah, Victoria says biology. Victoria is not biology, it's mathematics. So formal science is mathematics. Okay, P says all of the above. That is correct. D is the answer, all of the above. Now, the B part, we are going to talk about matching. And what are we going to match? Match the items in A with those in B by filling in the correct letter in the space provided. Okay, A, virtue. Virtue is under what? Is it deductive science, measurement instrument, empirical science, mathematical rule, nonsense perception object, or medical science? Virtue. If you remember where we mentioned virtue, that was the same place we mentioned beauty. uh Maybe we are talking about anger and the rest of them. So those are nonsense. Oh, sorry, I'm already giving you answer. So what's the answer to what are we going to match virtue to on this side? Virtue represents which of these listed options here? Yes, I am patiently waiting for you guys. Okay, so many people are saying E. Good. E is the correct one. Virtue is a nonsense perception object. What of physiology? What of physiology? Is physiology a deductive science? Don't forget that deductive sciences are also called formal sciences, while empirical sciences are inductive. They are inductive in nature. So physiology, is it empirical science, measuring instrument, mathematical rule, medical science? So what is physiology going to be matched to? Okay, someone says that physiology is medical science, which is F. Okay, all right. If you guys are concluding to that, what of scales? Scales, scales. What are we going to match scales to? Are we going to match it to deductive science, empirical science, mathematical rule, medical science, measuring instrument? Scales. Scales will be matched to what? B, measuring instrument. Okay, thank you. All right, what of biochemistry? Biochemistry. Is it, I think we only have deductive science left, uh, empirical science, mathematical rule, and okay, those are the ones we have left. We have deductive science, empirical science, and mathematical rule. So which of them are we going to match biochemistry to? Biochemistry, empirical science. Thank you. So somebody already said is empirical science. So we now have mathematical rule and deductive science deductive science. Okay, I don't know if that is actually correct, but what of BODMAS? BODMAS is what? We only have two things left: mathematical rule and deductive science. Which one are we going to match BODMAS to? BODMAS to be matched to what? No, BODMAS cannot be matched to A. Mathematical rule. Thank you. BODMAS is a rule in mathematics. Don't forget that although we said that formal sciences are deductive, they follow rules, concepts, and theories. But yes, you are correct that BODMAS is under deductive science because it is under mathematics, and mathematics is under formal science, and formal science are the ones that are deductive in nature. However, Bodmas is a rule. We can't directly say it is a deductive science. It's just a rule under deductive science. So since we have another option that looks like mathematical rule, it's better, it is more suited for Bodmas than deductive science. And geometry is also part of science. Don't forget, it was under science we mentioned geometry. When we say that formal sciences, the primary example is mathematics, and under mathematics we have geometry, algebra, and the rest. So automatically the only thing left is deductive science. So geometry will be matched to A, deductive science, because it's a formal science under mathematics. I think we've done enough. You guys have been doing great. That is awesome. So we have 3.3 to start with, which is the aim of science. The aim of science. And I think that is where we'll start from in the next class, because I want you guys that have exams tomorrow to have time to digest the course you have tomorrow. So the reason why we are studying this one so early is that this is the most notorious GST you have in none. So it requires time to digest it. And I think the ones we've done tonight is already out of it. So thank you guys for attending this 1 hour class. For those that are not here, please share the links with them after the class so they can revisit it. It's always recorded. As soon as we end it, the recording will be available on the channel. It's that same link. So I believe now you understand what science means, the two ways of studying science, the three ways of defining science: as a body of knowledge, as an institution, and as a method of acquiring knowledge. Then the two ways of grouping science, grouping them based on the method of studying them, which is formal and empirical science, grouping them based on the things they study, that is the natural sciences and the social sciences, and examples under them. And you know the meaning of board mass by now. And then you know that it was the new Encyclopedia Britannica in 1995 that defined science as the study of the nature, or the world, the study of the world around us, or the study of the world of nature. That was the definition of science by them, but it's not complete. So that is how we talked about other things. You know the full meaning of BODMAS now: bracket of division, multiplication, addition, subtraction, and every other thing we have done tonight. I believe you will not forget them. You will not forget them. And the exercises we've done. So thank you guys. Have a wonderful evening. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I wish you guys luck. For those of you that have exams tomorrow, come out with your A's. Good night.